Hello, this is Michael Swinford, and this is another edition of Veteran Voice. I've often wondered myself what a hero was. I know a lot of people call a lot of different people heroes, but as I begin to research it, I realized that there's not too many live heroes left. Because you excel in sports and music does not make you a hero. But you stay with us today as we meet a real, true American hero. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. As we stated earlier, we have a very special guest with us today that's going to tell us a little bit of what a real hero is all about. Gail Robinson-Butler, Tammy Thompson, we're so happy to have you both here on this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you think of a hero, what immediately comes to your mind?
Well, after having met you and talked with you for about 15 minutes today, I'm thinking Michael Swinford might come to my mind today.
I second that.
No, thank you very much. I'm humbled by that. But the real hero, I don't know what the definition is. I looked it up in the dictionary, and it said something about ordinary people like you and I do extraordinary things.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, well, the people that worked in Katrina, they could be heroes. The bombing in New York when the towers came down, those people were heroes. It's not your music star, it's not your football players and all. They are icons, or they are people we sort of look up to for their...
They're celebrities.
They are, yeah. And there's a big chasm between a celebrity and a hero, especially true. So you all have said that there's a real-life American hero coming to WKCTC.
Yes.
Would you tell me a little bit about what is going to transpire?
Well, we have Marcus Luttrell, who is the lone survivor of Operation Redwing, which took place in 2006 in Afghanistan. Marcus is one of 4 Navy SEALs who flew in, and he was the only one that made it.
They actually went in to try and get one of the Taliban leaders. And when they did, they came upon they got found by some goat herders. And they had to decide whether or not to let them go by the rules of engagement of the United States. And they did decide to let them go, and then they turned them into the Taliban, and that's where the battle began.
Well, apparently they did not learn anything in Vietnam. We had the same problem in Vietnam. We were told to put a magazine in a weapon, but we were not to push the shell up into the breech. We had to wait till somebody above us gave us permission to do that. And it sounds like the same thing is transpiring in Afghanistan and perhaps Iraq.
Well, he talks about in the book about the specific rules of engagement, and that they could not fire upon anyone unless they knew that they were going to be a danger or fire upon them. And so, they had to make a quick decision.
And they actually voted.
Yes, they did.
And even though Marcus was not the highest ranking SEAL that was on that mountain that day, I think his was the final vote.
Yes. One abstained, one said that they needed to kill them, and one said that he was going to leave it up to Marcus.
So Marcus made the ultimate decision that we're going to have to let these people go.
Right.
And that decision haunts him to this day.
And I'm sure it will forever. We always second guess our decisions later on, especially when they don't turn out right. And I would imagine Marcus would carry a lot of guilt around with him because he made that decision. But we have to admire a SEAL that's on a SEAL team to be able to make a decision.
Yes.
So many people cannot make a decision under stress or in wartime. They just fade away all of a sudden, and you can't find them. but at least he had the courage to stand up and say,
Yes.
I think this is what we ought to do.
And what a burden of
What
a
a burden.
decision that was to have to make.
And he said that he had his military heart that he voted with, and he had his Christian heart that he voted with. And they were unarmed, and he thought they should let them go.
Some of them were very young.
And some of them were very young. And, to give you an idea of Marcus, we have a clip to give you, to kind of meet him and to find out about the book Lone Survivor.
Well, let's take a look at that.
All right.
Is there also that emotional thing that people talk about all the time, that survivor's guilt as to why are you the one who survived when the 3 others with you died and those 16 who were coming to get you?
Well, I died on that mountain too, sir. I mean, I left a part of myself up there.
Petty Officer First Class Marcus Luttrell was born in Huntsville, Texas in 1975 and is a graduate of Sam Houston State University. He began training for the SEALs at age 14 with former Green Beret Billy Shelton, who lived nearby. He trained every day with his twin brother Morgan and others who aspired to join the military. On June 28, 2005, Luttrell and SEAL Team 10 were assigned to a mission to kill or capture Ahmad Shad, a high-ranking Taliban leader. The SEAL team was made up of Luttrell, Michael P. Murphy, Danny Dietz, and Matthew Axelson. Operation Redwing's mission was to gather intelligence on the Taliban leader with ties to Osama bin Laden. When the team encountered several goat herders, the SEALs questioned them and, after a debate about the rules of engagement, let them go. Shortly after, a large Taliban force ambushed the 4-man team on a remote ridge. Hours later, after Luttrell had watched all 3 friends die, a rescue helicopter carrying 16 Special Operation Forces was shot down, killing all on board. It remains the single largest loss of life in one day in Navy SEAL history. His body riddled with shrapnel and unable to stand, Luttrell began to crawl through the mountains in search of shelter. 5 nights after the nightmare began, Luttrell was rescued. In his best-selling book, Lone Survivor, the eyewitness account of Operation Redwing and the lost heroes of SEAL Team 10, Luttrell honors the memories of all those who died, sharing with us the incredible bravery, courage, and honor of these extraordinary warriors. He holds their lives up as examples of this guiding philosophy of the SEALs. Marcus Luttrell, a true American hero.
Well, that was very interesting. It gives us
Wow.
a little bit of insight into Marcus Luttrell.
And to what a hero, like they said at the end, a hero is.
Right. So
Also-
go ahead.
Well, one thing that I found interesting about that clip is that it gives us so much background into how Marcus trained from a very early age to do this. I mean, I think a lot of people may not recognize what it takes to go to a foreign country and fight for other people's freedom.
He
Well-
had decided at 15 he knew he wanted to be a Navy SEAL.
Right.
And
It's
started
like he
training.
was born to be one. I mean, he has the attitude and
The resilience to go and do
and
that.
when you go through SEAL training, it is not an easy job. 80% will quit. They
if
just
you read
can't.
this, if you read the book, you will be amazed that anyone could make it through SEAL training.
Well, being in the Navy, I'm familiar with some of it. And let me tell you, what I went through was nothing like he went through, but yet it was so demanding physically and emotionally and mentally that he is a special person even to make it through SEAL training. And
He is, and one of the things that I found interesting was it's also in the book, and then we have to move on because we don't have nearly enough time to talk about everything we probably could say about Marcus. But one of the things that I found interesting was when he went into the Navy, he said, you know, you can just skip this part of my training. I've already done that.
With the man that they mentioned, Shelton had trained him from a
Right.
teenager up.
And he said, just go ahead and send me to the SEAL training. Well, of course they didn't, and that guy, you know, that made it harder on him, I'm sure. But I find that an interesting part of Marcus's,
Personality.
especially at that point in
well,
his
it's
life.
actually during the training that you bond.
Right.
Adversity, mutual adversity, it bonds you together. And for
Right.
him to survive this ordeal, he had to have some very special ideas about how to do and when to do and what to do.
Well, they were such a well-oiled machine,
Yeah.
the four of them on that mountain. And they talk about how they don't have to really speak or talk. You know, they communicate because just by the feel of where they are and how they're hiding, and you know, the bond that they had. That's another reason he has such a hard time, because of the bond that they had. And Michael Murphy was actually his very best friend, and losing him, you know, was even harder on him than even, you know, losing the other two, just because of the fact that they'd been best friends all the way through training. So
Now, at some point, was he not captured, if you will, by the Pashtuns?
he wasn't captured. When he made it through the desert, they came and they actually took him in with something that's called locae. And he had absolutely no idea what that meant. He was severely wounded, had been, you know, dehydrated, and thinking that they were going to kill him because they were Afghans as well. And when they took him in at all costs to them and their family. And it was an ancient culture that they have that he had no idea what it was about. But they protected him from the Taliban that tried to come in and get him. The elder walked to the base to get help for him, to get rescued. And they did this at the cost of the Taliban threatening to kill their families.
I find that so amazing, because I look around America and I wonder, do we have a tribe of people of some sort that would do the same thing?
I don't know, but if we do, I really want to meet them.
I would like to meet them.
I really
yeah,
want to meet
because
them.
they essentially could be your enemy, but yet they go back to
could
ancient
be.
traditions and lay something down that is near and dear to their heart. It supersedes everything else.
And they vowed, when they made this decision to take him in, they vowed to protect him to their death.
So would he have made it without these people?
I doubt it.
I doubt it.
I doubt it.
So
and
that
I
was
think
really his only
Well,
saving grace.
the wounds that he had, they nursed his wounds, they took care of his wounds, they fed him. But what they did even more than that was that the Taliban wanted him, and they knew where he was, but they refused to give in. They would take him from place to place and hide him in different locations as the Taliban were trying to come in.
Well,
but they knew they would not cross the barrier of locae.
Well, why wouldn't the Taliban just march right in there and snatch him up and be gone with it?
they fought side by side to keep the Taliban away.
They actually did come in at the first night and beat him up, break his wrists. They you know, tortured him. But then the other Afghans came in and rushed them out, and then that's when they started moving him so that they couldn't get him anymore.
It'd be nice if the Taliban had the same reasoning that the Pashtun tribe did, because then we'd have a different situation.
Right. And I think, you know, probably we should look at something about the battle and the wounds that Marcus sustained. And we have another clip where he speaks some about this. And this is very difficult, especially for someone who has seen war up close and personal, to watch. But it's difficult for me to listen to and to watch Marcus too. So this clip will give us a little of the details of how harsh the situation of Operation Redwing was. So
Okay,
let's take a look.
We'd moved thousands of feet down that mountain the way we were fighting. And finally, I post up behind this rock on the left side of the mountain, and I'm shooting and laying down pretty good fire. And they were coming down. I mean, some of these guys were 20 feet away from me. They were right on top of us. They didn't care. They were there for one reason. Well, Matt Axelson, Axe, was in front of me, and I didn't know it. He was behind this boulder. I had passed him. And he sat down Indian style. I was knelt down like this, shooting back up, and he knelt down right here beside me. And I was like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, I can't see, man. They shot me in the head. I kind of froze a little bit. I was just like, man, just walk. I know you're going to fall. Just do what you can, okay? And I was like, I'll be down there for you, all right? Women, there's a certain way you should never hear a man scream, okay? Especially when he's screaming your name. And he was calling my name for help. He was like, Marcus, help me. I need help up here, Marcus, And he wouldn't stop calling my name. And it's burned into my head, and I can't get it out of there. It's been there ever since. I hear it every freaking day. And I couldn't get to him, I just couldn't get back up the mountain. I tried as best I can. I just can't crawl up a flat boulder, though. And I remember thinking, I was just like, I didn't want him to die, but I was just like, stop screaming my freaking name. And then it went quiet. I try to tell people when I give motivational speeches like football teams or something like that, I'm like, you know what a friend is? Tell me what your friend is. He's like, this guy right here, you know, I go have a drink with him and stuff like that. That's not your friend, okay? That's just a buddy of yours. You know your friend is, right? That's the guy when you're bleeding, you're shot up, the one that's still standing there when things are bad. Yeah, people ask me all the time, they're like, you know, why do you get up here and talk about this, or why do you keep doing this? I'm like, you've done enough. I'm like, well, does a fireman stop being a fireman once he makes one fire? Does a cop stop being a cop if he gets shot at or if he arrests somebody? No, it's not it. I gave a promise to do this till I can't do it anymore. And that hero title, I freaking hate that because it's not on the piece of paper I signed either. I knew what I was getting myself into. It's not a hero, okay? I'm a patriot. You know, and everybody wonders, like, what can we do to help out, this, that, and the other? Hey, all you got to do is say thank you and live your lives the way that you normally live your lives. Because the way terrorists win is when you change something, when you're too scared to do something, okay? Don't worry about it over there. We got it. You know, they implement a couple of rules on us that they probably shouldn't, that hinder us from doing our job, but don't worry about it. The minute you stop living your life the way you should, then the terrorists have already won. That's their job. And don't worry about the U.S. military. We've got that covered, you know. And to close this out, one thing, when I was laying in the mountain that day after the initial gunfight, I made a promise to God that I was like, you get me out of here, and I'll tell the world how brave these guys, how my friends fought and died up here. So I just want to tell you that I appreciate you letting me get up here and keep my promise not only to God, but to my teammates who died up on the mountain that day. Thank y'all.
That was very interesting. I want to discuss just for a couple minutes what he said. Do you really think that Marcus Luttrell can get on with his life, so to speak, after this all happening to him?
This is my opinion after reading the book and reading everything we can get our hands on, actually, about Marcus Luttrell, because I think that's probably what most of us have been trying to do to get the word out about what we're doing. I think that this is part of Marcus's healing process. As you said earlier, he suffers from survivor guilt. And unless you are a survivor of something like this, I don't think you have a concept of what that is at all. I did not, for sure.
I still don't even, I have no idea. I mean,
Right, only people like you and Marcus and other people who have seen action such as this
well,
would know.
You could use the same situation if a family were caught in a burning building and let's say only the mother got out or the father or one of the kids.
Or in the towers in New York when they fell.
You know, why didn't I do this for them before? You go back and second guess yourself, and of course it's too late. And that just kind of like a ping pong ball, it batters your mind back and forth, trying to second guess your own self, and it's not a pleasant thing.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, he lost his friends on that mountain, and he specifically says he wrote this book to keep their memories alive. And that, like she said, the part of the healing is that the more he talks about them, the more he talks about their heroism up there, they're still alive to him. And they're still alive in the minds of the audiences to hear their story. So that's why it's important, like she said, to heal, to keep this going, and to keep their memories alive.
Well, there's generally two ways to deal with trauma, war trauma especially. There's one segment that just never talks about it, has nothing to say whatsoever. And then the other faction is those that try to talk about it because it does help them heal. And not only that, but it helps other people heal. Even if we have people in the audience when he gets here that maybe has nothing to do with the military, but yet they may carry some guilt for whatever reason. And I think by listening to him that he could help a lot of people.
Well, and his guilt is intensified because even though he believed when he was injured and fell off that mountain, and there's so much more to it than falling off the mountain. They dived off mountains. He watched his teammates, not only his friends, his buddies, his brothers, but he watched the people that he fought side by side with and that, as you said, he bonded with all through training.
And he watched their heroism as they continued to fight with their wounds.
But then what he found out was even though he thought they were dead, one of them was not. And he has to deal with that every day. Marcus never sleeps at night. Marcus only sleeps in the daytime.
I understand that.
And I'm not sure exactly why that is. You could probably spread some light on that, but you know, he doesn't sleep at night. And sometimes he goes 4 days without sleeping. And one thing that the military does now is that they give people who are survivors and who make it out of situations like this, they give them service dogs or therapy dogs. Tammy and I can't figure out really which one Daisy was, but someone
Now,
killed
Daisy
that dog.
is whom?
Daisy was his service dog.
The first service dog.
Yes.
And the dog was named Daisy after the 4 team members. And some men came into his yard and shot his dog and killed that dog.
Now, why did they do that?
Evil.
Well, evil. But they didn't know who they were messing with.
Oh.
Because he got in the car and chased him across like 4 counties on the phone, telling the police they better come
Texas Rangers.
Texas Rangers come and get him. He had them, held them while the police got there.
Good
you know,
job.
Because you know they didn't know he was a
I
Navy
was
SEAL.
listening to that clip again this morning of his description of finding the dog, and he found his dog Daisy dead in the ditch, and then he said he had his weapon, and what is it that I think he said I pulled down, and I'm not sure exactly what that meant, but I think that meant he was ready for action, and he worked the tree line, and he saw these 4 guys.
And they didn't see him, by the way.
Oh,
No,
they
because he
probably
didn't
wouldn't.
want them to. And so
That's right.
he tracked them down and found them and called, after he had called the sheriff, as Tammy said, he called again 911 and said, you need to send backup. They're armed and so am I.
Yeah.
And he held them while they got there. I mean, it was just, you know, but now he has a new dog. They have
That's
that, and he
good.
travels everywhere with this dog, and that dog will be here with him on February 19th when he is on campus. So,
Right.
I heard you speaking about the Rangers. It's my understanding that the Army Rangers actually rescued Marcus. I wonder how that sits with him being a Navy SEAL.
he says he was glad to be rescued, but you know, he wanted it to be a Navy SEAL that came in and got him. But he was glad it was anybody.
I'm sure he was. Yeah.
We're getting another time signal. We're going to have to skip one of our clips, but this was, as it said in the beginning, in SEAL history, the
Largest
operation.
loss of life in one day.
Yes, that was the largest loss of Navy SEALs in one day. So, you know, I mean, because there were 16 who went in to rescue him, and they were that whole.
And so he still has that weighing
Absolutely.
on his mind, because
Absolutely.
when you lose 16 SEALs, that's a
Plus
tremendous
the
amount.
3 of his best friends
So
that he'd already
19,
lost.
he's the only one left to keep them alive. And before we go to the last, I just want to say that when I read this book, I cried and laughed. There were some funny parts in it as well, his sense of humor. But it truly made me proud to be an American. And this last clip really tells you more about Operation Redwing and his survival and why he is an American hero.
Well, let's take a look at that clip.
Tree 20 meters above me, and then I saw about 40 to 50 Taliban, Al-Qaeda militia above me. And I was like, all right. Well, I looked to my left, and then there's about 50 or 60 guys coming down this time, and then same one on the left side. So I turned around and looked at Mikey. I was like, hey, get back on the clock. It's go time. I'd never experienced anything like this before in my life. It was steel rain. Bless you. If you can imagine that. I mean, I didn't, there was nothing we could do. We started fighting. I mean, a hellacious gunfight. For 3 to 5 minutes, we sat in that grove of trees. And I imagine every time I'd shoot somebody, another one would take his spot. I didn't know how many there were because I couldn't see over the back of that hill. But there was always someone to pick up their spot, and they were maneuvering around to get a better vantage on us. We couldn't move anywhere. Normal situation like that, you'd rush and ambush. But that was hands and knees. There's no way we could do it. And the same way going to our right and our lefts. So I turned around and looked at, a round came in and hit the magazine of my gun. And I was like, I turned around and looked at Mikey. I was like, hey, man, I took a hit. We need to get out of here. And he's just like, all right, let's fall back. Well, what happened was I grabbed my rifle and I stood up, and then when I grabbed my pack, the ground gave out from underneath me. I started tumbling. And imagine, you know, I was 250 pounds, tumbling through these trees like a pinball in a machine. And, I mean, it was tearing us apart. I was paralyzed from the waist down. Come to find out, I had broken my back and my pelvis, torn my rotator cuff on top of my nose and my tongue, and I had been shot, and I had 11 through and throughs, and I had shrapnel, somewhere this long sticking out of my leg, on both legs. Well, I rolled over and I started belly crawling, and that, and I couldn't even pick my legs up, so I was just dragging that shrapnel. It was just, tearing me apart. Well, I finally wedged myself into the side of this mountain and covered myself with rocks, and took all my med gear was in my pants. So I took mud and just packed it into my legs, to stop the bleeding. And because I was kind of blacking out, I couldn't focus really. I was trying to clean my face. Well, I laid there all day. I didn't move 1 inch. 1 inch, because they knew how many of us there were, and they were looking for me. So I had enough stamina to pick my rifle up, and had to lay it over. My legs were mangled into these trees, and I had my rifle posted up. I lay there all day. Throughout the day, I kept getting feeling in my legs. I just kept looking at my feet, and I was like, all right, wiggle your toes, wiggle your toes. I couldn't figure out how to get out of there because I was all alone. And Navy said, well, my team had been everything to me. That's all I knew. And I went from being a hunter to being the hunt. They were hunting me now.
Well, that is certainly interesting. I cannot wait to come and hear him. Would you give me the dates and times that he'll be here?
Absolutely. He will be here on February 19th on the campus, WKCTC, West Kentucky Community and Technical College, in the Clemens Fine Arts Center. He will be doing a moderated interview, and the moderator will be Tom Butler Sr. at 1 p.m., and that's open to the general public, school groups, veteran groups, and then at 7 p.m. he will be doing a presentation just talking about everything that we have seen him talk about today and much more at 7 p.m. and then at 8:30 he'll do a book signing.
Sounds like a good idea. I can't wait to come and meet this gentleman because, of course, us both being in the Navy, we have a little brotherhood going. And,
That's right.
And before we leave, I'd like to publicly thank you. I've done it many times in private, Michael, but thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the show today, as we have really discussed a true, honest American hero. He did what he said he would do. He fought to the very end. We need more character like this, I think, in the general public today, that you will stand up and you'll stand for something and not just be on a whim, you take up a new cause every day. But Marcus knew very early in his training and in his age, actually, that he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. He not only is a Navy SEAL, but he is a patriot, and he is a Texan. So we're glad you visited with us today, and we'll see you next time on The Veteran Voice.